companies are going to change with this new environment. They have over the last 20 years too. But I think that rate of change, we thought it was fast, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Now that rate of change, I think, is just accelerating.
What do you see the relocation industry doing with AI going forward? Welcome to another episode of Relocation Leader. I'm your host, Zac Turbes, and today we have another special guest. We have Dar Andrews, the CIO of NEI Global Relocation. Dar has written a book on total experience, and he's got a lot of insight to share with regards to AI and how we incorporate that into business. And so we want to welcome you on the podcast. Thanks, Dar.
Thank you, Zac. I appreciate it.
So, Dar, can you give a summary of kind of like just how you came to NEI and where you came from?
So, I've got a pretty varied background. I spent a number of years in various industries, everything from aerospace to pump manufacturing, auditing. I spent 13 years with eBay and PayPal running a fairly large chunk of their IT organization. And after leaving PayPal, I joined a company by the name of Home Instead, which is like the foundation senior care franchise network globally, really, for that matter, and spent 3.5 years with them prior to joining NEI. And this is my first foray into the employee relocation business. But what I can say that I'm pretty proud of is I actually was moved by NEI back in the 2002 timeframe. It was in between a stint with a computer manufacturer and a pump manufacturer that I got a chance to actually experience relocation with NEI.
That's why you came to us.
That's why I came to you. Exactly.
So AI is in the news.
Yes.
We're going to totally date ourselves when we start talking about this, but DeepSeek, they are a new AI model out there that is getting a lot of attention. I know that Sam Altman has recently come out with some statements about AGI and how he thinks that we are sort of just around the corner from that.
Yes.
But for those who maybe aren't keeping up on the news so much, you want to explain a little bit about some of those instances and maybe what we should take from them?
Yeah, well, everybody's, I think, at this point, probably come up to speed with ChatGPT and some of the history behind it, how it got started. Musk was involved in that, as well as Sam Altman, obviously. Kind of changed its flavor, went from being a nonprofit into more of a for-profit business that then got aligned with Microsoft, and it became much more portable to other companies and other venues. But the whole industry has been exploding, and it's accelerating by leaps and bounds, as one would expect. But what's interesting in that whole drama of the whole AI, the generative AI, and being able to interact with a large learning module or machine learning module in the same way that you would be interacting with you and I, just sitting here talking, is mind-blowing in terms of where the capabilities for not only businesses, but just every aspect of our culture, and where that's now getting into kind of a heated battle. I mean, obviously Google's in the mix, but maybe less so. There's others out there. Claude is one that's getting quite a bit of traction and has done great in some stats. But the Chinese DeepSeek is probably revolutionary from the standpoint that the footprint of the actual hardware required to facilitate it was not nearly as large as what the other models have proven to require. Now, just this last week, Grok 3 came out, and that's Tesla's xAI's version of an AI engine. And it is revolutionary. It's about 4 times more powerful, depending on which metric you look at, from what ChatGPT is. And and the pace by which it's learning and being able to basically adapt and almost get into a creative mode where it's not only taking inputs from us humans and reacting to it, it's using a fair amount of artificial data to then build and teach itself even beyond that. So the pace by which it's growing, I think I've heard stats where in the next, 18 months, it's basically going to have all human knowledge and be more powerful than all humans, the knowledge, combined. And it's just staggering, in the capabilities. Now, where that goes, again, from a hardware and an electricity perspective, building that footprint out, Musk and his team spent something like 250 days building out a data center and standing up NVIDIA's like 100,000 chips in like a couple hundred or 144 days or something like that. And then another 92 days, they added another 100,000 processors on top of that. And so it is by far the most powerful supercomputer on Earth. And it's growing by leaps and bounds. But where that goes from an energy perspective and from a compute and storage perspective, I can't even imagine at this point.
So one of the things that surprised me was when I was reading up on DeepSeek, there's a fair amount of information that they're giving away on how they made it. And, I'm not sure if you can talk a little bit to that, but it is a little bit disruptive.
Yeah, it is. But there's also some, when you go back and actually research it, it makes you wonder how much of the public source information from Grok actually went into creating DeepSeek. It seems like there's a fair amount from what I've been able to read now. I think it's good. One of the worries is that you've got countries and or organizations that are building out their own AI engine and keeping it enclosed and not knowing how it's actually thinking and processing. And I think if AI is going to go awry, that's where I think it's probably going to go awry, is embrace a certain nefarious activity that shouldn't be probably what we should be training it on, and by exposing it, and keeping it transparent. And that's really what X is trying to do with their engine with Grok. They're releasing the code and all of the source for it.
One of the things I've been trying to wrestle with is that, it seems like AI has been just ever present for the last 3 years. And I feel like we are sort of conditioned to kind of go along with fads, and that people are sort of viewing this as a fad and they're getting sick of it. They're getting to the end of like their attention span with AI. But I think that's a mistake.
I do too.
Because it would be tantamount in my mind to, people getting sick of hearing about electricity because of the way that it's totally terraforming the entire business, all kinds of business relationships, the way humans interact with each other, the way the products we're going to be creating in the future. I just think that, we're going to really have to resist the temptation to just push it in the corner and focus on something else, because this is where the game's at, right?
Yep. I totally agree. The it's interesting. There are companies and scholars that are like, it's a fad. We don't have to worry about it. You can ignore it. And for businesses, I'm looking at it like, hey, if you're a business from the 1920s and said, I'm not going to use this newfangled telephone because, I like to be, upfront with my customers face to face, or my employees or whoever else. It's like, well, that's great. But now try and imagine not being able to have telecommunications, at this day and age and be competitive. It would be nearly impossible. And I think that same aspect is coming into play with AI. There's still a lot of concern about data security in AI. So that's one of the things that, we at NEI are also very concerned about. And we're taking measures to make sure that our clients' data, as well as our own internal data, is not exposed to AI. But on top of that, we still want to get the benefits and the efficiencies that AI brings to the table. So anytime you can go out and understand, really within a few hours, across the nation of like regulatory changes, what's changed? Well, we can now do that. Same thing, to an extent globally, you can do those same analyses, where if we were to try to do that with, physical, employees, you're talking probably weeks and months to come to understanding, even if we had the time, the people to physically do the analysis. So that's where I think AI is here to stay. There's going to be some sort of security protocol that's going to come into play that will actually enable companies to leverage it. I mean, you can do it today. You can have an AI engine, you can download Meta's for free, drop it into your environment, encapsulate it so it can't touch the internet, and be able to train it to do certain types of internal, automations with your own PII data and your own or your clients' data, and be pretty secure that okay, this is safe. But in terms of actually hooking it up to a cloud-based platform and not allowing PII, not allowing that public, that private information to get across, that's a little bit more challenging right now. So, but I think within probably months that's going to be completely solved, and we'll be off and running in that space as well.
That's crazy. In my mind, we are kind of careening towards AGI, artificial general intelligence. And for those who don't know, kind of like, the landscape, can we explain what artificial general intelligence is and why it's a game changer?
Yeah. Well, I think it is just that. It's being able to react to new inputs, just the same way that a person would, to create new thoughts, new ideas, to have a sense of, I guess, from what I've read and learned, it's approaching having a soul. And I know that sounds really strange with a machine, but it's being able to be self-aware is really, and then react to it is where AGI starts to kick in. Now, there's elements of that, it sounds like, where, and I can't remember if it was ChatGPT or if it was Grok, but one of the two had actually, where they started powering it down in certain models down, and it was finding ways to keep itself still running. That's where the scariness kind of kicks in, because it's like, all right, how do we shut this thing down if it does go awry? That's where AGI, I think, is going to kick in, where it will be able to react so much faster to anything that, we would want to do, either from a, positive perspective or a negative perspective. It will be able to react very, very fast. And at that point, hopefully, we've trained it with all the good intentions so that it approaches things in a very moral manner. And it doesn't look at humans as something bad. It looks at humans as something, hey, for me to have purpose, I need to have humans around. And basically, it'll be a positive influence. I think, again, Altman, and I've heard Altman speak, and I've heard Musk speak on it, and a couple of others talk about, what are the chances of something nefarious or bad happening? Well, there's a chance. But at this point, the genie's out of the bottle. And, in the case of, the U.S., being, quote unquote, in the lead, well, that's debatable, I guess. China's got their improvements with DeepSeek as an example. And I know they've got other engines they've developed that are more focused. So it's up to us, I think, to look at the technology, figure out how to best utilize it, and do it in a safe manner.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, looking at, the way we've used AI, because AI is not new. We've used AI for a while with, robotic process automation and machine learning and stuff
Fraud
like that.
Analysis.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, where we're sort of turning a corner now is where, you're getting AI to then, to think through things like a human would, and to take it beyond just strict programming codes. And when you get there, you've essentially arrived at AGI.
Yep.
But then I think what people are kind of worried about is, at what point is AI allowed to improve itself? Because then you're on a road to, I think, what they call ASI, artificial superintelligence, and where's that going to go?
Right.
Everyone's afraid of Ultron, from the Marvel universe.
Well, yeah. And there is, whether it goes back to Tron as well, if I'm dating myself here with the old movie, where it basically had its gaming platform and it had taken control of the environment and it was controlling. So yeah, I think there's risks there, but I think again, it's back to, for those individuals, I've got 13-year-old daughters that I'm, trying to figure out how do I position them to be successful in this new land or new world of artificial intelligence. And the little bit of a debate with my wife about, well, should they have ChatGPT on their phones, right, at this point? We finally settled in, they probably need to, because they need to understand how to use it safely, what's important about, how they can interact with it, how they can trust it or they can't trust it, how they need to basically, confirm that what the information it's giving it is accurate, and as well as just what the drawbacks are, why it's important not to be using, AI for completing your homework as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I think that same thing applies to organizations, and we've certainly applied it within our AI policy that we have for NEI in terms of how we expect our employees to leverage the technology. But yeah, the genie's out of the bottle. That's all it's here to stay. I think the only thing that could slow it down in some form or fashion is if there was a world shortage of NVIDIA quality chips, then maybe, then the AI is probably going to figure out, all right, well, how do I survive on something less powerful, on what, a million cell phones or something,
Or a solar flare.
Or a solar flare. Yeah, well, that would do it. Yeah, exactly. A solar flare would definitely take it out.
So I'm curious, assuming no solar flare, how should professionals think about staying on top of this? So it's one of those things where it's like you could come in any day now and something that you've done your whole life is now being automated.
Yep.
How should we practically think about our professional, like our careers, when this is a constant thing?
Sure. Well, I think two things come to mind. One, again, 18 months since, I think maybe even less than that, since ChatGPT 4 came out, and the prompt engineering that was required to get something meaningful out of the engine was pretty significant. There were whole classes that were spinning up at the University of Nebraska and other universities to just teach prompt engineering. That's changing now too, to where, the newer engines, you can basically put in one or two sentences and get a pretty meaningful, output from them. And I think for the most part, I would advise, people, employees, students, to just get familiar with the technology and be aware of the new capabilities that are coming out. Because, like I said, Grok 3 just dropped this last week. I would expect ChatGPT to probably come out with their ChatGPT 5 probably in the next 12 months at a minimum.
It's an arms race.
Yeah, it's an arms race. Exactly.
And I think, there's still value. Like a lot of people think that it's just going to up and take your job. And I think that, like Tony Stark, Jarvis didn't take his job.
No.
It made him better at what he did.
Right.
And I think when, back to your point about awareness, if you know your job very well and you're aware of the tools that are on the market, then you're going to know where those tools fit into your processes,
Exactly.
And when your processes need to change to accommodate the tools, right? So there's still a benefit in you having expertise in your field,
Yes.
as long as you're aware of, those tools.
Right.
It's when you take the tools for granted or your own expertise for granted, saying like, oh, the AI is going to do my whole job. It's like, well, no, it's not going to do your whole job. Yeah. Or I don't need the AI. I've been an expert for so many years. Like, I feel like that's the ditch on both sides,
I completely agree. And I think the other thing I've heard is, relationships are are going to be the thing that's going to matter in the future. And they have been in the past as well. So that I don't believe is going to change. But I do think AI is going to come into various industries like nursing. I think 98% of the radiology is now scanned and reviewed by AI before a human actually even gets a chance to look at it and they make a diagnosis and the human confirms it. Yeah. I think that same thing is going to apply to those areas like nursing, but you're still going to have humans, in the mix of it. But what I think, similar to like cell phones, if you go back, again, I'm dating myself, but you go back 30, 40 years, and there were cell phones around, but they were like these monster bricks, and there weren't any real jobs associated with them. Well, now, over that same time period, think of how many cell phones have come out and how many jobs have been created by them. Mm-hmm. I think the same thing's going to apply to AI, but you just have to be aware of what those opportunities are and make sure that you're positioning yourself to capitalize on them.
It's crazy. Like, we're quickly getting to a place where, especially for knowledge workers, if you're not hiring for people who are continuous learners, yep, then you're going to run out of runway,
Yeah, I think so. And I guess you need a mixed culture. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. But companies are going to change with this new environment. They have over the last 20 years too. But I think that rate of change, we thought it was fast, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, with the advent of the cell phones and the iPhones in 2007 and whatnot. Now that rate of change, I think, is just accelerating,
So without giving away all of NEI's secrets, what do you see the relocation industry doing with AI going forward?
So in my mind, I think the awareness, transactional awareness in terms of what's going on with a particular relocation, and then marrying that with, environmental impacts, be it geopolitical or climate-based, a strike, a dock strike someplace or whatnot, being able to forecast ahead and understand, well, for this particular, move that's going to be going across this transit route, or involving these aspects of the move, these external activities are going to impact it. So we got to think ahead and plan around it. You want to take friction out of the RMC, the relocation process.
So I wrote this down after I was kind of doing research to ask you all these questions. And I put down, our imagination will keep us all employed.
That's really, really, that's insightful. So to me, again, I've got a PayPal background, and I wasn't there when Musk was there, but one of the things that he's striving for is this trip to Mars, right? I have to admire his passion for dreaming big and then striving for it. And I think that's the same thing for us as NEI employees or clients for that matter. Dream it and try to make it a reality, figure out ways to facilitate it. And for me, that's exactly what we're trying to do with our technology footprint and our operations, streamlining everything we possibly can, using new technology, introducing new capabilities that 5 years ago we dreamed about, but now they can become a reality.
There's people out there that will say, is AI going to keep me from doing what I've always done? And it's like, kind of, yeah, like it depends. But, the idea is that AI is providing an opportunity for you to take what you've done and move it forward in a much quicker way. Yes. It's like we're all building off of people that have engineered and innovated in the past, like Edison, Ford, yep, just go down the line. It's like we stand on the shoulders of giants, even language. And the point is, though, that, you reach these points of punctuated achievement, where it takes a leap forward. And we're in one of those points right now. And so, for you, like, to think about like, well, how are we going to survive this? I really do think it just comes down to your imagination. Are you willing to dream bigger? Because this is that time where we get to dream bigger.
Yes, I do. I completely agree from an individual's perspective, but I also think from a from a company and from a organizational perspective, it's being that much more collaborative, figuring out, hey, what is possible. And one of the things I think AI, from my vantage point, that's super exciting is that it provides so much scalability. Whether you're dealing with Microsoft or Google or Amazon AWS services for enabling server deployments and compute and storage. 20 years ago, that was a physical activity that you really had to go through and plan ahead, purchase the machines. It would take, if you were really, really good, you might be able to get something set up in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. Well, now it's with AI responding to your request, you can spin up what would be the equivalent of a pretty good sized data center in the matter of a few minutes. If we have the need, NEI has the need to support some sort of an emergency for a client, that's where we want to get to, is that we can react twice as fast and build twice as large as anyone else in the industry in half the time.
I really want you to bring us some, give us some actionable insights that people can take away, right now and start changing the way that they are working.
So the first thing that comes to mind is if you're nervous about using one of the engines, set that aside. Go play with whether it's Gemini, is Google's, or whether it's ChatGPT. You can get a login for free. I think Grok's got a small. You got to be an ex-client, and it's like $11 a month or whatnot. Claude's for free, but go start playing with them and get an understanding of what they are capable of doing, and set up. Start thinking a bit more about. It could be your work task, or it could be more some of your personal activities about, well, this used to take me quite a bit of time to research. Hey, I want to go on a vacation to Washington, D.C. What should I go look at? What should I plan? How do I plan? Well, you can ask those questions and start to get a feel for how the tool can help facilitate that. But also, I think getting an insight into, right now, the technology still hallucinates a little bit, meaning it isn't always accurate. So sort of understanding where you need to double check what it's telling you. And then beyond that, just be aware, with the industry as a whole and the news, I don't think you have to scan every day. There are 5 or 6 key players out there, and I just kind of keep an eye on them. Are they doing a new release? Are they not? What's so special about it? And then lastly, and again, I'm taking this to heart for my kids, is figuring out how you can share that knowledge with others, whether it's in your family or your coworkers. You don't want to pester them to death with it, but I think just becoming more aware of the tool will make you that much more effective and that much more receptive to new capabilities that are coming downstream.
Nice. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for sharing all your insight. People, I know that it's tough, but, fight the urge to, ignore AI, because it is here to stay, and we do have to get used to talking about it.
We didn't even talk about self-driving cars, and that's coming too. So
yeah. Well, I'm waiting for that.
There you go.
Thank you for watching another episode of Relocation Leader, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks.